the heart of Australia's cities, a shocking reality unfolds. Entire families are now living in tents, not by choice, but by necessity. With rental prices soaring and social housing in crisis, parks and abandoned lots have become makeshift neighborhoods. In Brisbane, authorities are forcing people to move on, even as shelters remain full. The question is, how did one of the world's wealthiest nations allow this to happen?
Leave.
Welcome to Globe Path Travel Documentary Australia. The land of golden beaches, thriving cities, and endless opportunity. But beyond the postcard-perfect image lies a reality few dare to witness. Entire families sleeping in tents, addiction gripping communities, and crime rising in the shadows. How did one of the world's wealthiest nations let its streets become a battleground for survival? This is the story of Australia's most dangerous streets, where homelessness, crime, and despair collide. Don't just watch. Be part of the journey. If you found this documentary eye-opening, subscribe to Globe Path Travel Documentary for more deep dives into the world's hidden realities. Hit the like button to support powerful storytelling and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode.
Who I am, therefore I am, but no more. No, so.
Homelessness in Australia today. In 2025, Australia's homelessness crisis has reached catastrophic levels, with experts warning that the country is on the brink of a housing emergency. The latest government report reveals that over 50,000 Australians in desperate need of crisis accommodation were turned away due to a lack of resources, while 41.8% of low-income renters are struggling to afford housing. The number of households on social housing waiting lists has surged to 223,959, with 109,462 classified as priority cases, a sign that the system is failing its most vulnerable. The situation has become so dire that families are now living in tents, abandoned buildings, and even their cars, as rental prices skyrocket and affordable housing becomes nearly impossible to find. The crisis is hitting women fleeing domestic violence, young people, and Indigenous Australians the hardest. Domestic violence remains the leading cause of homelessness among women, with 46% of female homelessness cases linked to abuse. Young Australians are also suffering, with 1 in 10 experiencing homelessness in the past year. Indigenous Australians face homelessness at 9 times the rate of other Australians, highlighting the deep-rooted inequalities in the system. The root causes of homelessness are complex but interconnected. Domestic violence, mental health struggles, lack of affordable housing, and financial instability are pushing thousands into crisis. Over 82,500 people with mental health conditions required homelessness support in 2023-24, yet services remain overwhelmed. The housing crisis has left 640,000 households in severe financial distress, with many forced to choose between paying rent or buying food. The social and economic impacts of homelessness are devastating. Crime rates are rising as desperation leads to increased theft, drug-related offenses, and violence. Businesses are struggling as local economies suffer, with homelessness affecting consumer spending and safety. Healthcare costs are skyrocketing as homeless individuals face severe health issues, increasing the burden on public hospitals. Despite government promises, 640,000 households remain in urgent need of affordable housing, yet shelters are turning people away daily. The National Housing and Homelessness Plan aims to build more affordable homes, but experts warn it's not enough. Commonwealth rent assistance is failing to prevent homelessness among low-income renters, and social housing commitments fall far short of demand. There is hope, but only if drastic action is taken. Experts call for a $500 million homelessness prevention transformation fund to intervene before people reach crisis point. A commitment to building 1 million new social housing units over the next 20 years is essential to addressing the shortage. Expanding Housing First programs, which provide stable housing before addressing other issues, has proven effective in breaking the cycle of homelessness. Increased funding for mental health and domestic violence support is also critical to ensuring vulnerable individuals receive help before becoming homeless. The question remains, how did one of the world's wealthiest nations allow this to happen? And more importantly, will Australia take action before it's too late? The time for promises is over. The country stands at a crossroads, and the decisions made today will determine whether thousands continue to suffer or finally find a place to call home. Who's most at risk? Homelessness in Australia is a growing crisis, but certain groups are disproportionately affected, facing higher risks and fewer resources to escape the cycle. In 2025, the situation has worsened, with long-term homelessness rising by 25%. The following groups are the most vulnerable. Women fleeing domestic violence. Domestic abuse remains the leading cause of homelessness among women, with over 46% of female homelessness cases linked to escaping violence. Many women are forced to sleep in cars or unsafe temporary shelters due to the lack of available housing. Young people. 1 in 10 young Australians have experienced homelessness in the past year, often due to family breakdowns, financial instability, or mental health struggles. Youth homelessness is rising as rental prices soar, leaving many unable to afford independent living. Indigenous Australians, First Nations people experience homelessness at 9 times the rate of other Australians, reflecting deep-rooted inequalities in housing access, employment opportunities, and social services. Many Indigenous Australians face persistent homelessness, meaning they remain without stable housing for more than 7 months in a 2-year period. Low-income workers. The myth that employment guarantees stability is shattered by Australia's housing crisis. Many Australians with full-time jobs are still unable to afford rent, forcing them into unstable living conditions. Rental stress affects 41.8% of low-income renters, meaning they spend more than 30% of their income on housing, leaving little for essentials like food and healthcare. The housing emergency continues to escalate, with over 50,000 Australians turned away from crisis accommodation due to a lack of resources. Experts warn that without urgent intervention, Australia could face a homelessness epidemic within the next decade. The question remains, how did one of the world's wealthiest nations allow this to happen? And more importantly, will Australia take action before it's too late? Root causes of homelessness in Australia. The hidden crisis. Australia, a nation known for its prosperity, is facing a devastating homelessness crisis that is spiraling out of control. While the world sees its golden beaches and thriving cities, tens of thousands of Australians are sleeping in tents, cars, and abandoned buildings, victims of a system that has failed them. The root causes of this crisis are deeply embedded in economic instability, social inequalities, and government inaction, domestic and family violence. The silent epidemic. Domestic violence is the leading cause of homelessness among women and children, yet the system continues to fail survivors. In 2025, over 46% of women seeking homelessness services cite domestic abuse as the primary reason. Many escape violent homes only to find themselves sleeping in their cars, couch surfing, or forced into overcrowded shelters. The lack of long-term housing solutions means many survivors cycle between temporary accommodations and unstable living conditions, increasing their risk of chronic homelessness. Shockingly, some women are now living in parking lots, using their cars as makeshift homes because shelters are at 150% capacity. The government's response? Short-term refugee solutions that barely scratch the surface of the crisis. Experts warn that without urgent intervention, thousands more will be forced into dangerous and unstable living conditions. Mental health struggles. A crisis. Within a crisis. Mental health issues and homelessness are deeply interconnected. In 2023-24, over 82,500 people with mental health conditions required homelessness support, yet many were turned away due to overwhelmed services. Depression, anxiety, PTSD, and substance abuse disorders are rampant among the homeless population, yet access to treatment is nearly impossible without stable housing. The cycle is vicious. Homelessness worsens mental health, and untreated mental health issues make it harder to escape homelessness. Without stable housing, individuals cannot access therapy, medication, or rehabilitation programs, leaving them trapped in a downward spiral of poverty, illness, and isolation. Lack of affordable housing, the heart of the crisis. Australia's housing market has become one of the least affordable in the world, with 640,000 households now in severe financial distress. Rental prices have skyrocketed, forcing low-income families to spend more than 50% of their earnings on housing. The social housing waiting list has surged to 223,959 households, with 109,462 classified as priority cases. Yet new housing developments are failing to meet demand. Many Australians are now living in tents, abandoned buildings, or makeshift shelters. As they are unable to secure stable accommodation, experts warn that without urgent intervention, Australia could face a homelessness epidemic within the next decade. The lack of government investment in affordable housing has left thousands stranded, with no clear path to stability. Unemployment and financial instability, the silent push into homelessness. Job losses and rising living costs have pushed thousands into homelessness. Despite full-time employment, many Australians cannot afford rent, forcing them into unstable living conditions. The cost of living crisis has worsened in 2025, with food prices, utility bills, and healthcare costs rising faster than wages. Many families are forced to choose between paying rent or buying food, leading to evictions and financial ruin. Additionally, gig economy jobs and casual employment have made financial stability harder to achieve. Without consistent income, many workers fall into homelessness, unable to recover from unexpected expenses or job losses. The urgent need for solutions. Homelessness in Australia is no longer just a social issue, it's a national emergency. Without bold policy changes, the crisis will continue to escalate. Experts call for a $500 million homelessness prevention transformation fund to intervene before people reach crisis point. 1 million new social housing units over the next 20 years to address the shortage. Expansion of Housing First programs, which provide stable housing before addressing other issues. Increased funding for mental health and domestic violence support, ensuring vulnerable individuals receive help before becoming homeless. The question remains, how did one of the world's wealthiest nations allow this to happen? And more importantly, will Australia take action before it's too late? Social and economic impacts of homelessness in Australia. Homelessness in Australia has escalated into a national emergency, with the country now ranking among the highest homelessness rates in the OECD. The crisis is not just affecting individuals, it is reshaping communities, increasing crime, destabilizing local economies and overwhelming healthcare systems. As more people are forced onto the streets, desperation leads to rising crime rates, with theft, drug-related offenses, and violent incidents becoming more frequent. Many homeless individuals turn to survival crimes, stealing food or essentials, while others become entangled in drug addiction, either as a coping mechanism or due to exploitation by criminal networks. Law enforcement agencies report a significant increase in petty crimes and drug-related arrests, particularly in urban centers where homelessness is most concentrated. Beyond crime, businesses are struggling as homelessness affects consumer spending and safety. In major cities, retail districts and commercial areas are witnessing a decline in foot traffic as homelessness-related issues deter customers. Small businesses, especially those near high-density homeless populations, report losses due to theft, vandalism, and reduced customer engagement. The economic strain extends beyond individual businesses. Entire neighborhoods experience declining property values, making investment and development less attractive. The healthcare system is also buckling under the weight of the crisis. Homeless individuals face severe health issues, including malnutrition, untreated chronic illnesses, and exposure-related conditions such as pneumonia. Many suffer from mental health disorders exacerbated by the stress of living without shelter. Public hospitals and emergency services are overwhelmed, with a sharp increase in hospital admissions related to homelessness. The cost of treating homeless patients, who often require long-term medical care due to neglected health conditions, is skyrocketing, placing an immense financial burden on the healthcare system. Despite government efforts, homelessness services remain underfunded, forcing shelters to turn away thousands of people daily. Experts warn that without immediate intervention, Australia could face an irreversible homelessness epidemic, leading to higher crime rates, economic instability, and a collapsing healthcare infrastructure. The question remains, how did one of the world's wealthiest nations allow this crisis to spiral out of control? And more importantly, will Australia take action before it's too late? Current policies and their limits. Despite government efforts, Australia's homelessness crisis continues to escalate, with record-breaking numbers of people unable to access stable housing. The National Housing and Homelessness Plan was introduced to address the issue by increasing the supply of affordable homes. But experts warn that the plan falls drastically short of meeting the growing demand. While the government has committed to building more social housing, the pace of development is too slow, and the number of people in need is rising faster than solutions can be implemented. One of the key government support programs, Commonwealth Rent Assistance (CRA), is failing to prevent homelessness among low-income renters. Reports indicate that 41.8% of low-income renters are experiencing rental stress, meaning they spend more than 30% of their income on rent, leaving little for essentials like food and healthcare. The CRA payments have not kept up with skyrocketing rental prices, making it increasingly difficult for vulnerable Australians to stay housed. Mission Australia has called for the CRA threshold to be raised by 60%, arguing that without this increase, thousands more will be pushed into homelessness. The government's social housing commitments are also falling short. While new housing projects are being developed, only a fraction of the required homes are being built, leaving 640,000 households without access to affordable housing. The social housing waiting list has surged to 223,959 households, with 109,462 classified as priority cases, meaning they are in urgent need of shelter. Experts warn that if the government does not significantly increase investment, the number of households in need could rise to 1 million within the next 20 years. Meanwhile, emergency shelters are overwhelmed and underfunded, turning away thousands of people daily. In 2025, over 50,000 Australians in need of crisis accommodation were denied access due to lack of resources and space. Many shelters are operating at 150% capacity, forcing people to sleep in cars, tents, or on the streets. The government recently announced a $6.2 million homelessness sector development round, but experts argue that this funding is insufficient to address the scale of the crisis. With rising rental stress, a dysfunctional housing system, and an overwhelmed support network, Australia is facing a homelessness emergency. Experts are calling for a $500 million homelessness prevention transformation fund to intervene before people reach crisis point and 1 million new social housing units over the next 20 years. Without bold policy changes and immediate action, the crisis will continue to worsen, leaving thousands more Australians without a place to call home. Real solutions for the future. Despite the worsening homelessness crisis in Australia, experts believe that bold, immediate action can reverse the trend and prevent thousands from falling into homelessness. The key to solving this issue lies in long-term investment, policy reform, and targeted intervention programs. One of the most urgent proposals is the $500 million Homelessness Prevention Transformation Fund, designed to intervene before people reach crisis point. This fund would focus on early intervention strategies, ensuring that individuals at risk of homelessness receive financial assistance, rental subsidies, and emergency support before they are forced onto the streets. Experts argue that preventing homelessness is far more cost-effective than addressing it after people have already lost their homes. Another critical solution is the construction of 1 million new social housing units over the next 20 years. With 640,000 households currently in severe financial distress, the demand for affordable housing has far outpaced supply. The government's current social housing commitments fall drastically short, leaving thousands on waiting lists for years. Experts warn that without massive investment in social housing, Australia could face an irreversible homelessness epidemic. Increasing the number of public and community housing units would provide stable, long-term accommodation for vulnerable populations, reducing reliance on overcrowded shelters and temporary housing solutions. The expansion of Housing First programs is another proven strategy to combat homelessness. Unlike traditional models that require individuals to address mental health or addiction issues before receiving housing, the Housing First approach prioritizes stable housing first, allowing individuals to recover in a safe environment. Studies show that Housing First programs significantly reduce chronic homelessness, helping individuals reintegrate into society and access mental health care, employment opportunities, and social services. Experts argue that scaling up Housing First initiatives nationwide could dramatically reduce long-term homelessness rates. Finally, increased funding for mental health and domestic violence support is essential to prevent vulnerable individuals from becoming homeless in the first place. Domestic violence remains the leading cause of homelessness among women and children, yet support services are severely underfunded. Similarly, mental health struggles are a major factor in homelessness, with over 82,500 people requiring homelessness support due to mental health conditions. Without adequate funding for crisis intervention, therapy, and rehabilitation programs, many individuals remain trapped in a cycle of poverty, illness, and instability. Experts warn that without immediate action, Australia's homelessness crisis will continue to escalate, leading to higher crime rates, economic instability, and overwhelmed healthcare systems. The time for short-term fixes is over. Australia must commit to long-term, sustainable solutions to ensure that homelessness becomes rare, brief, and non-recurring. The question remains, will Australia take action before it's too late? Homelessness in Australia is not an unsolvable problem. It is a crisis that demands urgent action, bold policies, and unwavering compassion. The country stands at a crossroads, where the decisions made today will determine whether thousands continue to suffer or finally find a place to call home. Despite being one of the wealthiest nations in the world, Australia has failed to provide adequate housing solutions, leaving over 50,000 people without access to crisis accommodation and 640,000 households in severe financial distress. The social housing waiting list has surged to 223,959 households, with 109,462 classified as priority cases, yet government commitments fall drastically short of meeting demand. The consequences of inaction are devastating: rising crime rates, overwhelmed healthcare systems, and struggling businesses. Families are living in tents, abandoned buildings, and cars, while shelters turn away thousands daily due to lack of resources. Experts warn that without immediate intervention, Australia could face an irreversible homelessness epidemic within the next decade. The time for short-term fixes is over. Australia must commit to long-term, sustainable solutions to ensure that homelessness becomes rare, brief, and non-recurring. The path forward is clear: a $500 million homelessness prevention transformation fund, 1 million new social housing units, expansion of Housing First programs, and increased funding for mental health and domestic violence support. The question remains: will Australia take action before it's too late? The nation must decide whether it will continue to ignore the suffering of its most vulnerable citizens, or finally commit to ending homelessness once and for all. Thank you for watching this eye-opening documentary. Homelessness is a crisis that demands awareness, discussion, and action. If this video helped you see the reality behind Australia's streets, make sure to subscribe to Globe Path Travel Documentary for more in-depth explorations of the world's hidden truths. Hit the like button to support impactful storytelling, comment your thoughts to keep the conversation going, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next journey into the world's most pressing issues.